And anything that was damaged with the cold and like these anomalous frost events, the yield coming off the head is going to be much smaller in terms of the kernel size as well. I'm talking about wheat here, corn as well. We're starting to see all of these changes coming, and the media is now flipping into more of a defensive mode.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum, and the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne.
If you didn't see that article coming out of the Wall Street Journal just, what was it, on the 25th or 24th, they were putting into question the last 30 years of global warming projections and forecasts, literally throwing James Hansen and Peter Wadhams under the bus. Now, in my opinion, this is the first time I've ever seen a major news publication come out and throw like the spearhead people for the global warming movement under the bus and saying, you were all wrong. We got to look for a different thing. Now, what's going on with our weather? Like, you're starting to see this divergence of media personalities and media personnel starting to want to protect themselves, it looks like. Then again, this is my opinion. They were calling global warming for so long, and that was great when it was warming, because our sun went through a 3,000-year grand solar maximum in the 1990s, and it's tapered off and it's declining now, and we're heading into a grand solar minimum. Awesome. It's just a cycle. Natural. Now, during the warming time, all the media was on it. They were all getting money. Everybody's getting financing, tenureships, grants, whatever, to keep the global warming research going. Entire careers, entire industries were built off of this global warming, that it was going to get warmer every year, and all these changes were coming because of a warming climate. Now that's not happening anymore. So you can start to see people jumping into the lifeboat, because when push comes to shove in the next 2 or 3 years, people are going to really start to demand answers. And I mean that demand. I'm not even talking about asking, because when their food prices have tripled and the economy is in a tailspin because we're spending all of our money on food and not going to movies, not buying computers, TVs, not traveling, all disposable, a lot of it's going to be spent on food. Like, an enormous amount of disposable income is going to be directed into the food industry. Stocks, if you own any food stocks, like supermarket stocks, whatever, those are going to just go through the roof. You're going to see massive gains, just like you did in 2008 with the energy companies. Anything you touched that was cents was dollars, right? This will be the same thing with food producers, middle persons, manufacturers, and then end distributors and supermarkets, et cetera, involved in food distribution. That's going to be the new cash cow coming up in a couple years. People are going to quickly realize that global cooling is here, and when it is, they're going to they're going to demand answers as to when did you know this, and why did you not tell us? Media organizations still feeding the global warming narrative, yet all the information now is absolutely pointing to we've just definitely turned a curve into global cooling. The grand solar minimum is amplifying its effect. It's science, it's a cycle. Deal with it, understand it, and let's get solutions ready for it. But when media is still pushing global warming, yet they know that the fact is it's actually cooling at the moment, and it's going to continue to cool. When your livelihood's affected and your family is not properly fed, let's go back to the China story of the social credit. You can only push people so far before they revolt.
And this episode's brought to you by TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds since 1974. Full range of garden seeds, microgreen seeds, sprouting seeds, wheatgrass, grain seeds, flower seeds, herb seeds, and ground cover crop. I encourage you to take a look at their website, TrueLeafMarket.com, and they even have free starter guides there for you to learn how to grow sprouts, microgreens, herbs, and wheatgrass. Use the link below and give yourself the gift of organic and heirloom seeds.
The dissent you're seeing purposely put into place in the United States in the political spectrum is to get you to focus on everything else except for your rising food prices. The way it's going at the moment, all of this political movement to get you to start infighting in the country will keep your eyes off of what's happening with the weather, what's happening with the Grand Solar Minimum, what's happening with your food price rises, because you're going to be focused on fighting with yourselves. Like, you have to wonder how many of these senators and congressmen, and not just in the United States, but how many parliamentary members in other countries and nations are also very aware of what's coming with this Grand Solar Minimum, how it's going to affect the society. The chaos is going to reign anyway. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no way to sugarcoat it, and that's why I like to talk about the solutions on the show too, along with the problems. You know, and I, and also Christian on Ice Age Farmer, had also featured the strangest and most bizarre of all stories so far. Okay, you can understand cold coming and wiping out a vineyard. That's one thing, and it's expected. Cold will kill grapes. The Christmas tree industry has just lost $15 million of their trees due to cold damage. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Christmas trees, the pine trees that you buy, that specific type of pine that you buy to put in your house for Christmas, which is a super cold weather tree that gets covered in snow every year. It's meant for that environment. It is a cold weather species that can go to the very edge of the climatic zones as far as you can grow, then once you go beyond the tree line. Just before you get to that tree line, that's Christmas tree line, literally. Now, they farm these Christmas trees to sell, obviously. They're all about the same size when they cut them, wrap them up, bulk industry, they send them by container across the planet. They had cold weather damage on those trees, to the point that it wiped out at least $15 million of the trees of the Christmas tree industry in Canada. Now, I'm asking the question, all right, this is a serious question. Now, this is a species that's meant for cold weather. It endures some of the coldest, harshest, climate zones on our planet in terms of cold. What kind of frost does it take to damage a Christmas tree? What kind of cold weather anomaly does it take to damage Christmas trees and to make them die from cold damage? It's almost like saying, a coconut tree died from heat damage. I mean, how extreme would the heat have to be to kill off a coconut tree? It's sort of that same thing going on here. How much heat would it take to kill off sugarcane? These are questions that the media is not talking about. The media is not raising these questions. But we should. When we're at the extreme of the very edge of our grow zones, the cold must be pushing way further south, where the edge of the tree line where these Christmas trees grow, they don't grow any further north because they just can't. It's too cold and they can't survive there. This looks like that zone has definitely shifted south, and it's to the point now where those Christmas tree, looks like plantations or whatever, are now in the uninhabitable zone. At least for that last crop damage event. Now, this is the first year of the real amplification, and we have several more years ramping up into 2023 and 2024 before we hit what I would call the first peak out of two. There's two waves coming. This is just all up into the first wave here that we're talking about. There should be maybe a little tiny respite in 2025 and 2026 as the sun's magnetic field slightly turns on again for those couple years, but then it's going to turn off just as quickly, and it's going to go into going to cancel each other out of the magnetic waves again on all layers, these 4 layers. But then it'll quickly go back to the cold again. And then round number 2, this is where it gets interesting, and wave number 2 is everything's already gotten cold. it's already into the cold anyway, and then we get into the second wave. So this is a whole separate thing, but that's years down the line. I'm just trying to tell you, if it's already getting this cold where it's damaging tree species that are hardy cold species anyway, what's it going to be like in 4 or 5 more years when it gets really cold?